Have you ever heard the Indian proverb, "Blessed is he who plants trees under whose shade he will never sit"? Today I want to share with you a lesser known Irish tree story that invites us to think about what lasts beyond us, and in fact the way that the poetry of our living and loving can become a gift and a source of nourishment to those who will follow us. Fáilte a chairde. Welcome, my friends. Fáilte chrí. Welcome from my heart. I'm glad you're here. My name is Kate, and I am a professor of Irish language and folklore, and also, like you, like everyone here, a multi-passionate creator who loves making things. And I love the way Irish folklore and creative living and practice come together to help us live more joyfully, with more inspiration, more pleasure. So I want to share with you this story. It's called Scél, Baile, Binnbérlaigh, Buan. It's fun to say. It's a 16th century story. It's in Middle Irish. It's in a couple of 16th century manuscripts, and it's not very much discussed, but I think it has so much for us. So let me tell you, and then we'll talk it over. Once long ago, there was a wonderful young man called Balia, and everyone called him Binnbérlaigh, which means sweet-tongued, sweet-speaking. Everything he said seemed to just ring with pleasure in the ears of those who listened. And everyone loved him. The old, the young, the maidens, the men, everybody loved Balia. He was, in fact, the special sweetheart of a woman from the south of Ireland called Ailinn. Ailinn loved him, and Balia loved her. Balia lived outside of Binnbérlaigh, which is in the north of Ireland, and Ailinn lived in Leinster, the province in the southeast of Ireland. And they loved each other, didn't see each other often, but they made a plan that they would meet at Rossnaree, which is on the banks of the Boyne River. And if you look at the Boyne River, it's in County Meath, and Meath means centre or middle. So that was a good place to meet, right in the middle of Ireland, him coming south from the north, her coming north from the south. And what a joyful procession they made. So here comes south, Baile, Binnbérlaigh, Buan, with all of his men. And when they finally reached Rossnaree on the banks of the Boyne, they saw a strange thing. They saw a man, an arachta, a spectre of a man, darting toward them in the strangest way. He looked like a hawk down a cliff, or a sudden wind off of the green sea as he came toward them. And Balia said, "Go forward and ask that man, what does he want with us here?" And so they asked him, "What news have you? What's the news?" And he said, "I have no news," said this odd man, "except that as I was coming from the south, from Leinster, that Ailinn, the especial love of Baile Binnbérlaigh, was waylaid by the youths of Leinster and died in captivity. And she had been coming to see Balia, her love, and they are not fated to meet in this life, though they are fated to meet afterward." And upon hearing those terrible words, Baile Binnbérlaigh dropped dead on the spot. I'm sorry to tell you. And his friends they dug his grave, and they raised his stone, and they wrote his name on it. And right away, they began to have his funeral games, and they mourned him. Well, meanwhile, Ailinn was about to leave her grianan, her sunroom, and into the sunroom stepped this odd man that she'd never met before. And she said, "Who are you, and where have you come from, and what news do you have?" And the strange man said, "I've come from the north, where Baile Binnbérlaigh Buan has just died, and his funeral games are being played now, and his mourning is being done as we speak. And he was coming from the north to meet his special love, Allen. And those two were never fated to meet in this life, but they will meet afterward. And as soon as she heard those words, she died on the spot. And her grave was dug, and her funeral games were played, and mourning was done for her. In the north, Balia's grave, a great yew tree grew up out of it. And it grew for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, everyone agreed that when you looked at the yew tree, you could see the very image of Balia's face in the leaves and branches. It was amazing. And amazing to say, in the south, it was the same. Out of Allen's grave grew a beautiful apple tree. A beautiful apple tree. And after 7 years, it was a mighty tree. And everyone agreed that when you looked at it, when you looked at the branches and the leaves, you could really see the exact image of Allen's beautiful face. Well, it wasn't long after that the sages and druids and poets and wise people of the north decided that they would cut down Balia's yew tree and make into it a tablet for poetry. And the sages and druids and poets and wise people of the south came to the same conclusion, and they cut down Allen's apple tree and made of it a poetry tablet. And what was written on these tablets, amazing to say, on both of them, Balia's tablet was inscribed with the love stories and the wooings and the love adventures of all the people of the north of Ireland. And Allen's tablet was inscribed with all the love stories and adventures and wooings and marriages of the people of the south of Ireland. Well, when Samhain came, Halloween, the annual Éineach, the annual fair, was to be taking place, and Cormac MacArt was the High King at the time, and he brought everyone together, and the sages and poets and druids and wise men of the north came, and the sages and druids and wise men and powerful people of the south came, carrying those two poetry tablets. And Art, the father of Cormac, he was very curious when he saw them, and he asked to see them, and they were brought to him at exactly the same time and put into his arms. And as he looked at them, the two tablets jumped together and entwined, just like woodbine growing around a branch or a twig. They grew around each other, these little leaves and branches, and they were entwined and inseparable. And so they remained all the rest of their days for many, many years to come. And they were seen as a treasure of love and poetry. So what a story that is. What a story that is. So we see here the association of trees with poetry, and there's lots more to say about that, and trees with love, and with posterity and what lasts beyond us. But I also think it's very interesting that we see an association with trees and art. So Cormac MacArt, Cormac's son of Art, Art is his father, this old man who is curious about these tablets, curious about this poetry, these love stories and poems. And in his presence, they jump together. Now, I've been thinking about that all week because I also found a wonderful word, Crannbhean, which means a tree woman, and, as it happens, Crannfhear. That means a tree man. Now, symbols are multivocalic. They have many, many meanings, right? I often find that people want to reduce a symbol or any kind of object to a single pointed meaning, but that really isn't the way of symbols. I think a symbol is kind of like a house that you walk into, and you find as you go further that there are many, many rooms. And in fact, the more you the more you investigate, the more rooms you find. And that's true of tales as well. Tales are like mansions. They open out and out and out. And so this idea of tree and the associations of tree, like I told you, there are associations with poetry, with love, with might, with size, with grandeur, even with magic. We could talk about that someday. But there's also an association of the tree with decrepitude and age. And so when we talk about a Crannbhean, a tree woman, or a Crannfhear, a tree man, I think there's a temptation, and those are defined as an aging woman and an aging man. So a tree woman is an aging woman and a tree man is an aging man. And so yes, there is this association with age and withering and decrepitude and stiffness. No question. But you know, there's a great scholar, a Harvard scholar called John Miles Foley, and he wrote about an idea he called immanence, which means that when you invoke one aspect of a symbol, all the others are present. And it's an idea that I come to again and again. So when I think of a tree man or a tree woman, even if the primary intended meaning might be a decrepit or aging or withering person, I can't help but also hold in mind, heart, those other meanings of poetry and love and posterity and might. And so I see here the potential for us to work skillfully with symbols. And I decided instantly that I want to take this one on. I think anyone, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, beyond, if you like it, take it. I'm definitely taking on being a Crannbhean, a tree woman. I see so much potential in that. I think we are at this point a kind of ecosystem in which others can take shelter. There is nourishment and shade and pleasure and a sense of continuity at this point of our lives. We also know so much more about trees now than we used to. And I think many of us suspected, of course, that trees are more interesting and sentient and intelligent than those who just dismiss them as inanimate objects, material to be done whatever we want with. Now we know that trees actually communicate with each other. And so that too is exciting to me, that idea that through the roots, through the ways that we are rooted, we're in communication with each other. So we're giving our gifts, that idea that from mighty oaks, from little acorns, mighty oaks grow. Whatever little things that we're doing to help, to nurture, to assist, those things are taking root around us. Someone said to me kindly recently that I am a library in myself. And that's one of the nicest compliments I can imagine. I think we all are once we arrive at this age of being a tree man or tree woman, and that others can be taking those books out, can be checking that knowledge and wisdom out for a long time to come. So I'd like to ask you, would you like to take on this identity of being a tree man or a tree woman? And if so, what kind of ecosystem are you growing around you? What kind of gifts are you giving to posterity? What is the atmosphere of your life that you are hoping to transmit through your roots and your branches? And finally, how do you yourself receive nourishment? Because that's the other part of this. The tree is not merely a resource for the animals and people and insects and everyone that will shelter under it or take nourishment from it. It's also a thriving, flourishing being itself, and it knows how to reach deep into the earth to take what it needs and to reach high into the heavens to gain the sun and the wind and the rain. So how are you taking nourishment? So that is the very skimming of tree folklore. There's so much more, but it's really what I want us to think about, those gifts that we are giving to posterity through our poetry of living and loving. So thank you for watching as ever. If you enjoyed this, I would be so grateful if you'd like the video. That gives me so much help, honestly. You'd be surprised. It's so encouraging. And also, if you haven't, please subscribe, join us. Again, it's free, costs you nothing, and it really helps get the word out. And perhaps share this video with a friend who could use a lift. So thank you, my friends. It's a pleasure to be with you. I hope you have a week in which you feel, I hope you feel the strength in your roots and branches. And I also hope you feel the nourishment that you are providing in this world, because I know that you are. I'll see you next week.